Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to talk today about two items, and that's inbreeding, line breeding and outbreeding, and on the other hand about DNA. First of all, about inbreeding. What is inbreeding? Inbreeding is mating of closely related animals. Now, breeders often say, well, I don't practice inbreeding, I just practice line breeding. But line breeding is only a mild form of inbreeding, so in the end, the effect you achieve is the same. Then there is another term, that's crossbreeding, and crossbreeding is, by definition, the mating of animals that are unrelated. But what you should be aware of is that there are within the purebred breeds we work with, there are within close populations, there are hardly any animals that are not more or less related. So the real crossbreeding, in the sense it's defined in genetics, you can't apply within dog breeds. Why do we apply inbreeding? Inbreeding is applied to promote homozygosity, but that's a genetical term. What do you mean when you apply inbreeding? It's applied to fix desired traits, desired features. It's, as people say, to make animals breed true, or to make sure that the offspring only has the desired features you're trying to select on. The main problem, the general problem of applying inbreeding, is that you can't apply inbreeding just for a number of traits. You always, when you apply inbreeding, you always have consequences, you create consequences, you affect the whole genome of the animal. Inbreeding affects all 25,000 pairs of genes of the animals, so for the whole genome, the level of homozygosity increases. And you should realize that increased level of homozygosity causes a reduced genetic variability within your breed population, which results in a reduced range to cope with environmental threats. So inbreeding does have consequences for the animal as a whole, for the population as a whole. If we look at highly inbred animal populations, and that's true for dogs, it's true for cats, it's true for any species, then we see that most of those populations have a very high percentage of genetic defects. I will show you a table later on to illustrate that. What we see is an increased susceptibility to infections, which partly is the cause for reduced life expectancy. Highly inbred animals live shorter, have a shorter lifespan. Then what we see is that in almost all highly inbred animal populations, you see increased levels of anxiety and nervousness. And then in the end, you see a reduced fertility, and then fertility in all its aspects. So the male side as well as the female side. Looking at incidences of genetic defects in populations, we did a number of studies. By now it's about we did it for about 40 breeds, but I took some examples. If you look at the percentages, what you see in this table, the percentages of animals with a genetically determined defect, then look for instance at a West Highland White Terrier with more than 30% problems in skin and coat. They have an allergic sensibility which means that a lot of these animals get problems with their coat during their life. There's 3 in every 10. Look at, for instance, Bernese mountain dogs with problems in the limbs. It's almost 30% of the animals who will, in the first half, will meet these problems in the first half of their life. Well, I can take any example. Maybe the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. 12% of the animals in our study in 2000 showed a problem that at that time we thought it was a neck hernia. So it was a problem, we thought it came from the neck area, but later on it was shown that it's a problem that is a genetic problem that that operates on the structure of the skull. Well, we can go through the list. If you look at percentages as you see them here, you should translate them into real numbers. If I look at that Cavalier problem, we see the same, exactly the same genetic problem in humans, where 8 individuals per 100,000 births are affected. In this dog breed, we have 12,000 affected animals in 100,000 births. So it's really an increased level of genetic defects. Well, I won't go too much in detail. Look at lifespan. We looked at the lifespan of a Dutch dog breed. You could, for instance, look at the 50% survival rate. If you look at the highest inbred group, so the animals with 30%, with a coefficient of inbreeding of 30% or more, then you see that the 50% survival point is about 9 years of age. If you compare it with the lowest inbred animals, then their 50% survival is at 13 years of age. Well, you can pick any point here and you see that the level of inbreeding has consequences for lifespan. Animals don't die from their coefficient of inbreeding. Animals die sooner because of the decreased vitality, because of the susceptibility for infections, because of whatever problem they have to cope with their environment. So, as a whole, you could say 10% more in the level of inbreeding, in the coefficient of inbreeding, means 1 year shorter to live. Look at fertility. The figures we have here are based on the coefficient of inbreeding of the dam. You should realize there is a difference between what the consequences of the inbreeding coefficient of inbreeding of a litter and the coefficient of inbreeding of the dam. At the level of the dam, you have the environment in which litters are created and growing and in the end being born and being weaned. Look at the percentage. Red are the high level inbreeding coefficients, green are the lowest ones. Look at, for instance, the percentage of litters that is 3 or more. Well, in the highest group, we see that only 30–40% of the animals gets litters of 3 pups, weaned pups or more. If you look at the lowest group, then you see that you see that 80–85% of the animals has litters of 3 or more. Look at litters of 5 weaned pups or more. In the highest inbred group, it's none. It's 0 over 5 pups. In the lowest inbred group, it's almost 70% of the animals. So the level of inbreeding has consequences for fertility. It can be any aspect of fertility. It can be the quality of the sperm. It can be behavioral aspects in the dog or in the bitch. It can be a matter of a reduced number of eggs being ovulated. It can be a matter of a reduced number of eggs being fertilized. Any aspect can get problems because of the reduced coefficient of inbreeding. What we saw in, for instance, in laboratory animal populations was that for different strains of mice with a high level of inbreeding, in one breed it was behavior, in the other breed it was male fertility, in a third breed it was a matter of ovulation, reduced number of ovulated eggs. One strain had problems in behavioral aspects where the mother care was reduced. The females didn't know how to gather their litter and to take care of it, so all the puppies were scattered over the cage. Anything can go wrong. Well, here in another breed, the Wetterhoen, more or less the same results, where you see that where you see that there is a clear relationship between the level of inbreeding and litter size again. Here we do have the results at the birth level. What we saw before, it was at weaning level, so 6 to 8 weeks after birth. What's calculated in there, or what's included in there, is the losses between birth and weaning. Here we look at birth figures, and then we look at the relationship between the age of the mother and the litter size at different levels of inbreeding. The red one is a coefficient of inbreeding of the bitch of more than 24%. The green one is below up to 12%. And then again, you can see that a higher level of inbreeding causes a lower fertility, a lower output in terms of animals born in this case than the low coefficients of inbreeding. For dog breeders, for breeders who breed animal for beauty, fertility as such, numbers, quantity, is not important. But quantity, fertility, is important as an indicator for vitality of your strain. So if you are breeding beautiful animals and your fertility is going down, you wouldn't want a higher fertility to breed a larger number of beautiful animals. You want that fertility to make sure that the strain you are breeding in the end survives, because fertility can in the end reduce to almost zero, where you can't breed from your excellent beautiful animals anymore. Or we know in a cat breed where in some strains the fertility at the birth level is still high, 8 or 9 kittens, but at the weaning level we don't achieve more than 1 or 2 kittens, which means that, well, yes, they are beautiful in the definitions of the cat breeders, but it's hard to get those beautiful cats available. Then again, coefficient of inbreeding related to age of the bitch, and it's always again that same picture you see where the highest coefficient of inbreeding has the lowest